If you're new to photography, then this camera in your hand can feel overwhelming. So in this video, I want to share with you the 5 settings that you need to know that you can control as a new photographer. Now, none of the settings that I'm going to share with you can be adjusted in auto mode. So technically, the first setting that you need to change is to get out of auto, which I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, you're either newly out of auto or you want to get out of auto. So let's talk about that after these 5 settings. Setting number 1, your white balance. Our eyes and brains are just fantastic at correcting light that we see as white. If you have a night shift on your phone or your iPad, then you notice, when the screen turns orangish yellow tint. But after 10 or 15 minutes, you don't even really recognize it anymore. And that's because your brain adapts even though you know that the screen is orange. Your camera tries to mimic that ability with the auto white balance setting. But more often than not, I actually find it more inconsistent than helpful. You'll especially notice the inconsistencies when shooting many photos in the same place in a series, like a wedding. One photo will look fine, maybe the next photo will look fine too, but if you look at them all together, some will be warm, some will be cool, some will be more green, some will be more magenta. Fixing this problem is really going to elevate the quality of your photography. To fix this, each camera maker has popular lighting conditions pre-programmed into the camera. From sunny, shade, indoors, tungsten, flash, some even have an underwater white balance setting. So check out your camera's manual to see in which setting it recommends you to use each white balance. Not only will your photos be closer to finish straight out of the camera, but it's going to save you a ton of time in editing as well, because you'll be starting from the same base. That brings us to setting number 2, metering modes. Your camera's metering mode determines how it measures light. And when your camera is simply a tool to capture light, learning how to use your camera's metering mode is pretty important to capturing incredible light. When we're just talking about exposure, choosing the right metering mode can be the difference between an average photo and a great photo. There are 3 main metering modes, and they might have slightly different names depending on your camera's manufacturer, but there's matrix, which reads the light from the whole frame. There's center weighted, which reads the light from the centermost portion of the frame. And then there's spot, which reads only the closest 5 to 10%. And on newer cameras, the spot metering mode is locked to wherever your focus point is. Now, because you are the only one who knows the type of photo that you want to capture, I can't tell you which metering mode to use and when. I will say that I don't change my metering modes often, but I would encourage you to play around with your metering modes next time you take out your camera. Again, remember, in auto, you cannot change these settings. So if you're serious about capturing great images, more so than just snapshots, it's best to just rip off the Band-Aid and start shooting in manual today. Manual is going to give you the most control over your camera, so you can capture the image that you visualize in your head. Now, if you need some help shooting in manual, you can grab my free ebook, Picture Perfect Camera Settings. It's where I share personal and professional images that I've shot, and I give real-world camera settings with a breakdown of what setting is most important and for what type of photo, and how to know when to change the other settings. And you can download your copy just by clicking the link in the description below. That brings us to setting number 3, and that is autofocus. You want your photos in focus, right? Well, your camera has several focusing modes to ensure that you get your shot in focus. The 3 most common types of autofocus modes are single, continuous, and manual. Single is best used when your subject is not moving closer or further away from you. So think portraits, landscapes, nature. And then there is continuous autofocus. That is when the camera will keep tracking your subject until you take the photo. This is great for when your subject is moving closer or further away from you. Cars, pets, kids, a bride walking down the aisle. And lastly is manual, which technically turns off autofocus and allows you to manually focus your lens. 99% of the time, I do not use manual focus, but when I do, it is a real lifesaver. I use manual focus a lot during a dark wedding reception because autofocus can struggle in the dark. Also, I'll use it if I need to get really close to my subject, because typically when you're real close, the camera's just going to try to hunt for focus. Or I'll use it if I know that my couple isn't going to move and I want to take a burst of photos without the camera having to spend time refocusing between each shot. Now let's move on to setting number 4, which is your camera's drive mode. Your camera's drive mode dictates how many photos per second your camera will take. In single shot, your camera takes just 1 photo when you press the shutter button. This is what mode I'm in 95% of the time that I shoot. But sometimes you do need to take a quick burst of photos. Child soccer game, your pup running while playing fetch, a couple's first kiss. Your drive mode can play a pivotal role in capturing the perfect moment without shooting just an insane number of photos. Mini cameras will allow you to choose how many photos per second you shoot. My Fuji X-T4 has options for 3, 5, 8, 11, 15, 20 frames per second. Knowing when to use 3 frames per second versus 20 frames per second is very important, especially knowing how to change them quickly will ensure that you will never miss a moment. Most cameras have 3 drive modes: single, where you just press the shutter and it takes a single photo; continuous low, or CL, which each camera is different, but this is typically around 3 to 4 frames per second, great for kids, slower moving things, but you still want to capture a burst to have your best pick of the best moment. And then there's CH for continuous high, and this is mostly used for sports or faster moving objects like dogs running, birds, cars, and you can capture photos typically up to about 20 frames per second. And that brings us to setting number 5, RAW or JPEG. There are 2 different image file types that your camera can record. JPEGs, which are kind of the internet standard for sharing photos because they're compressed and the file sizes are small. The other image format is RAW, and this is where your camera records all of the data that comes off of your camera's sensor. RAW files retain more color and light data than JPEGs, which makes them better if you plan on editing your images on a computer anyway. Today, I shoot both RAW and JPEG. I shoot RAW for professional work. Even though I do minimal edits, shooting in RAW is a bit of an insurance policy, just in case light changes real quick and I'm in the middle of shooting a moment. And then I shoot all of my personal images as JPEGs. With personal images, moment is just more important to me than the image quality. So getting the image on my computer or iPad to share them quick is kind of the name of the game. What setting is going to be the first that you dive into? Tell me in a comment below. Now it is time for a bonus: custom settings. So this bonus is a bonus because it's not really a setting that you need to change, but custom settings allow you to have a custom menu of your most adjusted settings. On my Fuji cameras here, I have one for wedding days and several that help me to achieve more of a stylized look in camera when I'm just shooting personal photos. Because each camera menu system is different, you have to check out the manual to learn how to create your own. But know that once you do, you'll be able to just be much faster behind the camera, getting you one step closer to your camera being used as a tool and not just some magic box that sometimes surprises you with great photos that it can capture. After settings, the next thing that you want to focus on in photography is your compositions. So go ahead and click this video right here to discover the 3 best compositions that will level up your photos about 98% of the time.